In this fourth class, we're going to look at the Encomienda, Reduccion, and Pueblo. So the Encomienda was the system followed at the very, very beginning of the colonial era. And then later on, the encomienda gave way to this other process called reducción. Although some reducciones, of course, are still within an encomienda. I'll explain to you later. And then this reducción, the entity came to be called doctrina because that is where the people are able to receive doctrine. Because if they are not gathered together in a reducción, it is difficult for them to receive doctrine. And then these doctrinas, once they are more stable, they will, and of course, there will be maybe more people living within the bounds of the doctrina, and because maybe more people are coming down from the mountain, or they're having population growth, or there's more in migration of some sort, you will now have a pueblo, and that is how some of our many of our towns in the lowland areas of the Philippines, especially in these Christianized areas, Bicol, Tagalog region, Ilocos region, Central Plain, all these lowland areas, this is where how their pueblos began. They began as reductions and then doctrinas and pueblos. So the encomienda is a system in which the natives were entrusted to a specific person called encomendero, and the person tasked to ensure that they were taught Catholic doctrine and were given protection. In exchange, the encomendero could collect tributes from his charge. From his charge, meaning the people who were entrusted to him. So, for example, if you were one of the soldiers who are accompanying Legazpi, usually, how else will you be able to support yourself? You don't own anything in the Philippines. Rather, you will be entrusted with a certain number of natives in a certain area. For example, okay, we will entrust to you the 500 natives in this specific area near this river. So, where are they? They are all over the place. They are in scattered settlements throughout the river banks. But then make sure that you are able to support a priest, a missionary who will try to teach them Catholic doctrine somehow, and make sure that if there are attacks against them, you protect them, or if there are crimes, you have to be the one to be in charge of punishing the offenders. So that is the main task of the encomendero. In a way, he's a person who is overseeing the community, which of course already has its own system of government, the barangays, but then he's supposed to be there to help them further. The problem is many of the encomenderos were more after the profit that they could draw out from their encomienda. So a lot of injustices happened through this system, both in Mexico, South America, and also here. In fact, here it was already lessened because the people had already complained in Mexico and South America. That and also the bishop, the first bishop of the Philippines, who would come, who's a Spanish bishop, um, who will very much be able to observe how badly encomenderos were treating some of the natives. So he will start correcting and punish. Actually, he cannot punish because he has no army, but he will start condemning how encomenderos were treating the people whom they were actually supposed to protect, pero they were just collecting tribute and the people are already starving. So after this encomienda was still there, but the more stable process that was initiated in the early period was this idea of reduction. So actually, the encomendero is supposed to help in doing this, but actually the reduction, it was mainly the missionaries who were responsible for it to really have a stable effect. So the process that involved the resettlement of natives in smaller and more compact territories to facilitate Christianization and governance. So the picture here is of maybe this is Manila, I'm not so sure, but whatever this is, you can see that there's a church in the middle, and then there's an open space near the church where people can gather for different activities, whether it be recreation, whether it be this particular slide shows you a very neat procession, religious procession happening. You can see the leaders of the procession here carrying the big cross in front, and then the horses. I think these are the soldiers in their gala costume, and you can see that the people are attending this very neat religious event. And these are precisely why the Spanish wanted the Filipinos to settle into more compact communities. It's for them to have what is called a civic life. The reductions, and then these reductions are have been subject to very specific laws called the laws of the Indies. So these are issued by the king, or sometimes, yes, they are issued by the king or the council of the Indies. So let the Indians be reduced to villages and not live divided and separated by their sierras and the montes, forgoing any profit, spiritual and temporal, without relief of our ministers, and that which human needs require, which men should give each other. So here, you can see the elements which the law is considering is that the Indians are tend to be scattered among mountains and uplands, and they cannot be able to enjoy spiritual, they cannot enjoy the sacraments, neither can they receive religious instruction, and also temporal because they are actually fending for themselves. This was actually quite preferred by the natives at that time, and many of them later will only later on see that okay, it's good to have settled agriculture, but before Sweden agriculture was good enough for them to support one family, but they saw that maybe having sedentary agriculture is more stable, and maybe moving into the town is actually a good idea. And then also without relief of our ministers, because of course to minister to all these people who live in different areas, just remember, if you have ever gone to a rural service project, just going to the site um, is actually sometimes the effort to go all the way to that area which you want to catechize, even if actually they just to gather the children, just to gather the teenagers, to catechize them. It's not so easy to do that, and that's what the whole idea of the Reduccion was supposed to achieve. Of course, this was always a very contentious process because some of the natives really did not like to be moved, so they had to be persuaded, and they also had to be sometimes some armed escorts would be called in for the reduction to be accomplished. But it was not very effective when done by force, because what's going to happen is that you force them today, but in next week they will already start escaping. So even tomorrow they will start escaping. And that's what happened to many settlements that were supposed to be reduction, but they ended up being empty because the natives did not want to receive the religious formation. Let the Indians be placed in a polity without being forced, in order that they may benefit from Christianity and polity. It should be ordered that they be congregated and live together, since in this way their prelates will know them, their needs and doctrine will be attended to, and because this is convenient, we command the viceroys and the governors to achieve this by all possible means, without coercing them and explaining to them how useful and beneficial this mandate is for their progress and good governance. So you can see this is very much an ideal in the Spanish colonial process. And it's really their policy that it's their idea of civilization, that you are more human if you will live together and be able to help each other. And it is a way of reorganizing the space of the natives, because the natives want to live not so close to each other. They help each other, they trade, but to be able to share a common life, like common worship, common instruction, common schools. Well, maybe some barangays did it, but it was not so widespread at that time.